Pediatrics in Richmond, California.
Great. So thank you for being here and sharing. Would you be willing to share with us about what your climate anxiety felt or feels like?
So I, living in Northern California, I think really have experienced the brunt of my climate anxiety around wildfires. I have 2 young kids who are ages 4 and almost 2. And the last 3 falls in Northern California have been times of really intense anxiety for all of us living here in terms of wildfire smoke exposure and the threat of evacuation due to wildfires. That I intellectually have always known about the climate crisis and identified with it, but that this experience has really made it very personal and brought it home in many ways, especially living with 2 young kids who are so dependent on my protection to keep them safe. So that has really been what has really brought the climate health crisis home to me and really compelled me to action. Especially, I would say, just having 2 young children and really thinking in a different way about what the world could or would look like in the next, in their lifetime.
What did the anxiety feel like?
For everyone carries and feels their anxiety differently. For me, I feel it in my stomach. I feel just sort of this sense of tightness and dread, and sort of an inability to sit still. It's a very much like, I think for most people, it's a very physical sensation, and it's very uncomfortable. I've had to sit with that many times and still will. And yeah, that's what it feels like.
Do you find that, so what helped you transition from just feeling that alone to working with other people to do something about it?
That's a really good question. I don't know that there was one exact turning point, other than starting to feel like, if not me, then who else? Starting to really recognize that this is, that the climate crisis is about health, and physicians and medical providers have a really, really important and unique role in the education and the preparation for what is happening with our health and how the climate crisis will exacerbate that. So starting to really recognize that as a physician, and especially as a pediatrician, I really do have a role there. And then also this sense of this is such a pressing and urgent issue that we all have to get out of our comfort zones and out of our specific tracks and lanes that we feel we are part of, and branch beyond that. And something has just, maybe it's age or being a parent, but I feel much more comfortable with this idea now of, well, I'm going to try that, or I'm going to talk to this person, even though who am I to reach out to, this high up state government official or the head of this institution or whomever, feeling much more empowered, and that I want to just try as many things as possible to see what is possible, because I think these are really unique times, and I think all of us have responsibility to do what we can, and as a physician and as a pediatrician, I have a lot that I can do.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What helped you get started, though? What helped engage?
Yeah, I think for me, being offered something. So when I met you, and when you started saying, I'm organizing this group of physicians to do this one specific thing, which was to meet with elected officials on September 20th, which was the most recent global climate strike day. You offered me a very tangible thing that I could do that seemed relatively simple, because it it involved, some preparation and some thinking, but it wasn't on the scale of we need to solve the climate crisis right now. It felt like it was something I could do. And so I think it was a combination of sort of the right place at the right time, and then also being offered something that felt felt like I could handle it. Was what I think sort of tipped me from inactivity to activity.
Yeah. What do you hope for that you're working towards? Like, what's the vision for the future?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I would like to see is that every person understand that the climate crisis is about health. And it's especially about the health of our kids. I think when we think about what people value and what they hope for, health is such an intrinsically core value that we all hold so close. Making the climate crisis often seems so abstract and so unpressing compared to all of the other myriad things that people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so what I want is to make and help people to understand that this is really about our health, and that it's something we need to value because of the ways in which it will impact our health, and especially our kids' health. So my hope for 2030 is, number one, that we've transitioned off of fossil fuels, especially here in California. My hope is that we've stopped drilling for fossil fuels, period, and transitioned to a renewable energy economy. And my second hope is that when we hear discussion of the climate crisis in any walk of life, that health and the climate crisis are always interwoven, because I think that's the message that is motivating and important for people to hear.
And then finishing up, what would you have for like advice if somebody kind of is concerned and worried for their kids, but they don't really know what to start with?
So I have a few different thoughts. So in terms of kids, I think the number one recommendation is to talk to your kids. I think, obviously this has to be tailored to the age of your kids. For very young kids, I think there is such value in making sure that you are bringing your kids out into nature, talking to them about the magnificence and the beauty of the earth, and making sure that you're talking to them about how important it is to be nice to the earth and to be kind to the earth, because it is all we've got, right? So sharing, young kids, my son is not even quite 4, and he already it's hard to say exactly how much he's internalized, but he can report back to me on when people are and aren't being kind to the earth. And I think my hope is that will stay with him as he grows. And for older kids, obviously the discussion can be a lot more nuanced, but there is so much fear and anxiety. Much of it is very justified among kids and especially adolescents right now about what the climate crisis is going to look like and what it means for young people today. So talking to your kids about it is vital. I think the more we talk about it, the more we form connections, form networks that are helpful in terms of making our own anxiety, helping us to feel more connected to people who share our same concerns, and ultimately in compelling action. The other big thing from a sort of political systems perspective is that anyone who can needs to get out in their communities and be a voice for talking about the climate crisis, and we also need to vote into office at all levels politicians who understand the urgency of the climate crisis. So if you can, you must vote, and wherever you can broadcast your voice, be it at your kids' school, at the park, at hyper local, all the way up to the state and the national level, talk about this and be a voice that is constant and urgent about how important this is and how everything relates back to the climate crisis. So talk to your kids and get involved and figure out where, at what level you want to get involved, and then go with it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.